you're not a terrorist. When it gets
Why
darker
do you
and darker,
always, people
you're
like
a
you
terrorist.
always bring race into it? It's got nothing to do with race
like
and
me.
everything to do with people who kill people. Yes, people like you, race baiters like you.
I have not heard you.
Yes.
We had literally people saying the Jews will not replace us, and Donald Trump said they're very fine people. We literally have people, like I said, going against this Capitol right here, committing a violent insurrection. But for some strange reason, when the #1 domestic terror threat in America and also increasingly in Europe and the UK is white terrorists, white nationalist terrorists, white extremists, I never hear anyone say, you know what, we should ban them. We should deport them. Oh, what I instead hear is they have economic anxiety. The double standard here at play has to be exposed, right? And I want people to really think about what they're really advocating. If someone doesn't like your speech, you know what? You're not just going to be not tolerated. You're going to be deported, especially if you're a person of color. How does that make a multiracial society that is both the UK and America safer and better, especially, and I'm speaking now as an American, and you know in the UK, the rising domestic terror threat is not Islamic extremism, which, by the way, exists. It is white nationalist extremism. Not a single word about that, but I hear all these free speech advocates. All these people are all about Western civilization. All of a sudden turn to censorship and all of a sudden become authoritarian when it comes to Muslims and people of color.
Yeah, but hang on.
Why is that?
Hang on.
Piers, let me educate your guest a little bit about his own country.
So please educate me. Please educate me.
I'm about to. Be quiet and I will. Now, first of all, nobody's calling for people to be deported because of their views. We have laws in this country against organizations that are proscribed as terrorists, and I have no problem with terrorists being removed from this country under the laws of this country. Secondly, Donald Trump never said that the people calling for the eradication of Jews were fine people. If you go and look at his quotes, he actually condemned them and said they should be condemned absolutely. But the people who were there protesting about the statues, they were the ones that were fine people.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
The press is treated unfairly, sir. I'm sorry, I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly? No, I just didn't understand what you were saying.
No. There were people in that rally, and I looked the night before. If you look, there were people protesting very quietly the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day, it looked like they had some rough, bad people, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest, and very legally protest, because, you know, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this, there are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country, a horrible moment.
Now, you should educate yourself about those things. And thirdly, you should educate about the fact that, regrettably, I would quite like to have a First Amendment here in the UK. We do not have a First Amendment, and I would have a lot more sympathy with your argument if we hadn't spent the last 10 years watching people be sacked from their jobs for saying women are women and men are men.
Yeah, and I would also add that when you say that I'm not respecting free speech, Vajat, when I say I don't respect people who won't condemn Hamas,
I didn't say you.
No, but they can say it. They can say it. I just don't have to respect it. It's a bit like when I block people on Twitter.
Of course, you don't have to respect it.
No, but when I block people on X, for example, or formerly Twitter, and people say, well, you're suppressing their free speech. No, I'm not. They can still tweet what the hell they like. I just don't have to read it. I don't have to hear it. You know, that actually is what free speech is. And the First Amendment, which is one of the most powerful protectors of free speech in the world, it doesn't cover many things, from child pornography to defamation to all sorts of stuff is not protected by the First Amendment. And nobody, I don't think, who looks at this sensibly would say that a terror group that espouses not just hatred, but violent hatred and the mass killing of people, that is never protected by free speech, is it? And should it be?
It shouldn't be, but listen, this is interesting. Speaking about education, allow me to retort and educate. And I'll give you an example about the double standards, and I want you guys to really respond to this. Speaking about terrorism and violence, on the platform you mentioned, X, also known as Twitter, one of the wealthiest men, Elon Musk, has repeatedly promoted the replacement theory, an anti-Semitic conspiracy that blames Jews for trying to weaken and replace Western civilization with Muslims and immigrants and LGBTQ communities, right? That conspiracy theory has radicalized individuals to commit violence against Jews, against Muslims, against black people, against Latinos. That conspiracy has been retweeted and platformed and mainstreamed by the Republican Party, people like Elise Stefanik and Donald Trump, who, by the way, dined with Nick Fuentes, the leading white nationalist leader in America. You guys are fine with that. But when it comes to any other group that says something...
Who said we're fine with that?
Wait a minute. I wrote a whole...
Who said we're fine with that?
I wrote a whole column condemning it. What are you talking about?
Good. But you're not going to deport them, right? Are you going to deport them? Are you going to call them out for literally being linked to a terrorist conspiracy?
People who are citizens who are not citizens of the country should be deported if they're members of a terrorist group. Why don't you understand the distinction
should national
between
security,
being a member of a terrorist
should the
group
government
and saying something
should
wrong?
Should U.S. and UK government and national security go after these groups and these elected officials and these organizations that have literally repeated and mainstreamed a conspiracy that has motivated terrorists to commit terrorism?
Okay, so let me edumacate this gentleman right over here from the United States of America. I think he's trying to place a point. And listen, there's no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt that white supremacists and white nationalists are certainly a domestic threat to the United States and to Western Europe and any other place that white supremacists and white nationalists thrive. But the fact of the matter is that to say that they are on the same level as Islamist terrorists, or that they want to bring about the end of days or establish a caliphate or establish some type of a thing where only their doctrine or their religion or their thing is going to, I mean, maybe some of them feel that, you know, they want to put their system of government or whatever, you know, in place of it. But that would be something that is actually, you know, if they're anti-United States and they want to bring about the overthrow of the government, they're talking now you're talking that they're on the same plane as Islamists and terrorists and fundamentalists. And what this gentleman was basically saying, taking the words of Donald Trump, and they have been completely taken the words out of context, and they do this all the time. You know, some very fine people, if you go through, just like we played the clip there, if you go through, he is absolutely very, very, very clear. I don't know how much clearer you can be. But the press, when does a press ever let the truth, you know, dictate what they're going to do? Did the same thing when he made this speech when he was running for president about people coming from Mexico. He said they're sending some bad people. Not all of them, but they are sending some bad people. But the way you hear it is that completely different. And it was as if 100% are all murderers and rapists and the worst of the worst. So we all know that. Now, as far as this thing about free speech going on, and, you know, Kisin, you know, talking about this thing here as well. In the United States of America, with our freedom of speech laws, if someone's protesting and they're saying, you know, down with whatever group, you know, down with the government, down with, name it. Okay, that's fine. That's, you know, you're protesting. Down with genocide. We're protesting genocide. You know, whatever the chants are, as long as they can't be construed as being violent, there's a whole difference by saying, you know, using the words like killing and murdering and genocide and those types of things, than just out there protesting. And yes, you can be shouting, I guess you can be screaming or whatever. But once your actions or your words fall into the category that possibly they might incite, they might cause violence, they might do something, that's a different story. And I say that because this gentleman is saying that Elon Musk is peddling a conspiracy theory about the replacement theory, and that theory has caused white nationalists to commit terrorist acts against blacks, Hispanics, Muslims, Latinos, any people of color. He has nothing to back that up. There is absolutely no factual basis for him to say that, other than it's just a continued type of thing that gets play in the press because it allows to continue this story that all these conspiracy theories are out there. It's the same thing by basically saying, oh, you're going to cause more terrorists. You know why? Because of your policies. Your foreign policies are causing more terrorism. So if we just don't do any more foreign policy interventions, the terrorists will go away. It's all BS, folks. It's all BS. Anyways, that's what we have on tap with you today. We have Konstantin Kisin and Piers Morgan along with Wajahid here. I'm not exactly sure what group he's from or whatever, but he must represent something. They have him here from the United States of America talking about Islamist fundamentalists and talking about that general practitioner in England that got his license revoked by the NHS. That's what we have on tap for you today. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir, where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what happens when everybody like this comes together and starts talking about politics, religion, culture, white supremacy, white nationalists, Islamists, Islam, Muslims, First Amendment, Second Amendment, they all come crashing together. Let's get back to more of the interview right now.
Group should be prosecuted under the law of the country in which they are a terrorist group.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked.
Well, but that's what I said. So you were challenging me about something I didn't say.
And I'm very curious.
People are allowed to have
why you are not
opinions,
concerned about this.
But in this instance, I didn't say I wasn't concerned about it. I said you can't deport citizens of the country in which they live, A. And B, I keep pointing out to you that the person we're talking about in this case, this NHS GP, he is a member of a terrorist group. We're not talking about him having the wrong opinions. People are allowed to have the wrong opinions, both in this country and in your country. It's something that we all celebrate as part of the heritage of Western civilization, and we would all, I hope, defend. The issue here is we have laws in this country about being a member of a terrorist group, and people who are members of a terrorist group, I hope you would agree with me, should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And if they are prosecuted to the extent of the law and they are foreign citizens, should be deported. Will we agree on that?
We will agree on that. And I'll also say this, for those who are watching, especially the youth, there's a great meme, a Family Guy meme, where there's a chart of who gets to be labeled a terrorist and who doesn't. The front part of the chart is when you have light skin, you're not a terrorist. When it gets darker and darker,
people like you always bring race into it. It's got nothing to do with race and everything to do with people who kill people.
Konstantin is absolutely right. I don't know why every single time everybody brings color into it, brings race into it, and takes it down to it. It doesn't matter what color they are. You have Chechnyan Islamist terrorists that are white-skinned. Are you going to call them white supremacists, white nationalists? You have Muslims, that are white. You have Christians that are dark-skinned and black and brown. And you have Hindus that are brown and white. You have color variations in terms of, the only people that are truly probably white nationalists who don't have any skin color variations are those white nationalists. And that's pretty much it. That's why they call themselves white nationalists, white supremacists. But for you to bring this thing in, that if you're white, you're not going to be a terrorist. The white nationalists and white supremacists, they're terrorists. What the hell are you talking about?
Yes, people like you, race baiters like you.
I have not heard you.
Yes.
And I have not heard you really express this much outrage against the #1 domestic terror threat against all our communities in America and the UK, which is rising white nationalism.
I am
Not
a
word, but you seem
dark-skinned
to have a lot.
first-generation immigrant to the UK. I don't play your racial games. Stop using your skin color as a way to shut other people up, and let's talk about the issue. The issue here is, should we tolerate foreign terrorists in our country, or should we remove them? And my opinion is we should remove people who are not conducive to this country. And if someone like me, first-generation immigrant, comes here and wants to be a terrorist, it is first-generation immigrants like me that are at the front of the queue to get them out.
Okay. It's been a fascinating debate.
Remove people who are not conducive to the society.
It's been a fascinating debate. I actually think
who are terrorists, yes.
I actually think, Vajad, to be fair to you, I do think that the white nationalism related terrorist acts that we see increasingly is never played up as much, actually, as Islamist terror was, particularly in the heyday of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. I think it's a perfectly valid point to make, for what it's worth. I think I've made that point actually before. Before I let you go, Konstantin, you've done a lot of filming with the pro-Palestinian marches in London. What did you find?
Well, I actually went over the last few months, Piers. We went to the protest against anti-Semitism. We went to 2 pro-Palestine protests. We went to an Extinction Rebellion protest, which was very, very funny. I encourage people to go and watch that. But at the latest pro-Palestine protest in particular, there were some fascinating scenes. And, you know, we really tried to talk to people with an open mind. I don't have, actually, contrary to the discussion we've just had, a particularly strong position on it. I'm interested really in getting people's views. And one of the things that came through very strongly is young people in particular, of whom there are many, the way I would kind of describe it's a mixture of sort of beards and headscarves on the one hand and septum piercings and colored hair on the other. The young people who are there in particular, when you ask them very, very basic questions, you know, from which river to
well, let's take a look at a
sea,
clip, actually. We've got a clip with some of this. Let's watch it here.
So I just noticed the signs that you got from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What does that mean?
Well, it's quite self-explanatory.
How would that come about? What would happen to the Israelis, etc.?
I don't.
I'm trying to think of how to word it. Isn't it just as self-explanatory as the area of land? It's Palestine's land.
These kids are just idiots. They're just morons.
If I'm being honest with you, I just got this at the stand over there.
Okay.
I don't actually know the definition of the word intifada.
I mean, it's kind of laughable. I don't think for a moment that a lot of people on that march are that ignorant about it. A lot of them clearly are well informed and are absolutely marching because they want peace and they want to cease fire in Gaza. I completely understand that. But Vajat, when you hear that, there are a lot of young people joining up in these marches who are completely clueless. And I actually blame TikTok more than anything, which is the #1 news source now for kids under 25, and spews just relentless nonsense into their heads. And that's where they get their news.
This is where I'm going to stand up for the youth. If you look at the youth, it's been a stunning change where most youth here and abroad are actually, if you will, pro-Palestinian and want the occupation to end. And the flip side to that, Piers, I would say is the following. For those who are watching, we're the same when it comes to Facebook, we're the same when it comes to X, and we're the same when it comes to mainstream media. You are a breath of fresh air because you allow multiple opinions to come on, talk about Palestinian side and Israeli side. In America, you know that this wasn't the case. And so for those people who are terrified by the TikTok, just think of...
That's not true at all. That is not true at all. Now, it is that there's most of the leftist media is out there that doesn't allow this, and most of this, in terms of the anti-Semitism is coming, from the left. It's coming from the left. Look at what's happening with the universities. Harvard, Penn, MIT, 2 presidents of universities, Claudine Gay, and I can't think of the other lady, both sacked because of holding anti-Semitic views or allowing anti-Semitic views to foster and to fester on university campuses, which are already left-leaning ideologies to begin with. They're churning out leftists and liberals by the bushelful every year at graduation. The only station, and that's why you have, conservative radio that's out there, which is dominating the airwaves on the conservative side, which is coming through, social media, through, other avenues. But other than Fox News, even Fox News is sort of, I think right now, is sort of center left, except for a couple of shows. So again, this gentleman, by basically saying that the views aren't being allowed to be expressed in America, that the views are coming through loud and clear, loud and clear.
About what limited viewpoints that you got for 30, 40 years, and now, for better and for worse, this young generation is exposed to multiple narratives and they see for themselves what's happening, which is why you see the shift in which a lot of people, especially in Israel and here, are horrified by the Netanyahu government, want an end to the occupation, want a ceasefire, hate Hamas, hate extremists in the Netanyahu government, and believe that Palestinians have a right to freedom.
Yeah, well, they certainly do, in my estimation. But there is one clip, Konstantin, which really got to me. It was about me. Let's take a look.
So I see you've got a sign there that says journalism that get paid for selling lies, and I'm guessing that's Piers Morgan, right? Why do you say that this is journalism that's selling lies?
It's very obvious what is going on, all the lies about what happened on the October 7th, the justification for the genocide, they're all based on lies.
When you say lies about October 7th, what do you mean?
All those allegations that we never saw any footages of decapitated children that Piers Morgan always asked about, and all those women that got gang raped.
I mean, it was quite extraordinary, Konstantin, because one of the problems with platforming everybody actually for the last 3 months is you end up with the extremes on both sides hating you with equal vengeance and often being completely ill-informed actually about what I've actually said. But it was enlightening to see that, because I see that all day long on social media, that kind of view, which is really based on a lack of reality.
Ignorance, stupidity,
well, there was a lot of that going
idiocy.
On in the protest. And interestingly, I mean, you say most people there are well informed. We released in that half-an-hour documentary that people can go to Trigonometry, our YouTube channel, and watch. We released every single interview that we did. So we haven't cherry-picked these moments to make people look bad or anything like that. It contains, they're shortened down, but they are basically the content of what people said to us.
Okay.
And I have to say, most of the people we spoke to, didn't really seem that well informed, most of them. And secondly, I would say, there was an awful lot of the sort of thing you just heard, where people have some kind of way of pretending October 7th didn't happen. In fact, the first person you see in the video talks about how it's a false flag operation. There seems to be a lot of that going on too, where people are sort of, they sort of wish away the terrorist attack on October 7th. And it makes sense, because if you're calling for a ceasefire and you're calling on Israel to unilaterally essentially engage in a ceasefire, you have to pretend October 7th didn't happen, because otherwise you'd be calling on Hamas to hand over the hostages and the terrorists who took them, because that's how you get a ceasefire.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest blow-ups I had.
That last piece there, where you got the lady there, with the thing there in the headscarf. I mean, another Islamist doesn't want to even comprehend the fact that anything happened. It's all propaganda. It's all one-sided. Everything is coming from Israel. Hamas is perfectly fine. They're just, a normal, government entity, a normal government that's out there. They've been wronged, and they can do nothing wrong at all. And because she hasn't seen the footage, and even if they saw the footage, even if you release it, they'd say it's faked. It's Israeli propaganda. It's American propaganda. So you're not going to win. You're going to be damned if you do, damned if you don't. These people are never going to understand. And as far as the kids and other people, it's like I said, a kid is up there. He said, I just picked up a sign. I don't even know what intifada means. It's like when these kids go out for these marches for the Church of Climatology. They just, we're going to get out of class? Oh, great, I'll join. Do I care about energy? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know what? We gotta cut down our carbon usage. We gotta cut down oil. Oh, really? So when you go back to your classroom, you're gonna turn off the heat? You're gonna turn your phone off and never turn it back on again? Are you going to stop drinking out of plastic bottles? Are you gonna stop eating foods that have been refrigerated? You're gonna stop eating your food? You're gonna eat your meat raw when you go home? Are you going to walk? Because, you know, you can't drive. Are you going to do that? Are you going to give up your iPhone, your tablets? Are you going to give up all that? Your plastic, your rubber, your clothes, everything? Are you going to give all that thing up? These are things that, you know, it's easy to go out there and protest. So I have a lot more, there would be a lot more intellectual honesty if the people out there protesting know what they're protesting about and can at least give some type of a coherent rebuttal. Can somebody give you a coherent response as to why they're out there, what their sign that they're holding up means, what they're doing out there, and how long have they been involved in this type of thing? Or did they just start 5 minutes ago or 5 seconds ago? These kids have absolutely no clue whatsoever. And social media is really rotting their brains out. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. And if you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow. You all know what to do. Take a look at our video links above and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.